Willy Wonka's factory was never meant to be whimsical. Roald Dahl's first draft featured a child trapped alive inside a chocolate mould, encased in hardening sugar, unable to scream, forgotten overnight in a candy maker's home. That child was Charlie, and he was black. The story you know, the golden tickets and the magical chocolate river, that's the sanitized version, the one publishers forced Dahl to rewrite after his agent told him a black protagonist wouldn't appeal to readers. But the original manuscript still exists, buried in archives, and what Dahl actually wrote reads less like a children's fantasy and more like industrial horror, with a side of forced labour metaphors. There's a reason 3 different film adaptations still can't agree on who Wonka really is. They're all trying to hide the same thing. The version you grew up with goes like this. Poor virtuous Charlie Bucket finds a golden ticket and wins a tour of the world's most magical chocolate factory. 4 bratty children get punished in increasingly theatrical ways, sucked up pipes, turned into blueberries, tossed down garbage chutes, while Charlie's goodness is rewarded with the ultimate prize. He inherits the factory. Wonka, the eccentric genius, becomes his mentor. It's a morality tale. Greed punished, humility rewarded. Gene Wilder sang about pure imagination. Johnny Depp wore a bob cut and had daddy issues. Timothée Chalamet is about to do the prequel. 3 different Wonkas, same basic message. Kindness wins, candy conquers all, childhood wonder preserved. Except none of that was Dahl's original vision. Before we go darker, and we will, tell me this. Which childhood story do you suspect hides something sinister? Drop it in the comments. Maybe it becomes the next investigation. Now then, back to the nightmare Dahl almost published. In the first draft, written in the early 1960s, Charlie wasn't just poor. He was a young black boy living in extreme poverty, and Dahl made that explicit. The protagonist was written as a child of colour from the start. Then Dahl's literary agent, Sheila St. Lawrence, read the manuscript and delivered her professional assessment. Scrap the racial detail. It wouldn't appeal to readers. Dahl complied. Charlie became racially ambiguous in the published version, white in the illustrations, and that entire layer of the story, the part about a black child navigating a white man's factory, vanished. But the symbolism Dahl had woven into that original draft, that stayed. Specifically, the chocolate mould scene. Here's what happened in the version that almost went to print. During the factory tour, Charlie and the other children, 7 of them, not 5, enter a room called the Easter Room. Inside are life-size chocolate moulds shaped like children, hollow shells waiting to be filled. Wonka, distracted and manic as always, helps Charlie step inside one of these moulds as a joke, a bit of fun. Look how perfectly you fit. Then Wonka walks away, gets distracted by another invention, another idea, another child causing chaos, and the mould closes, automatically, mechanically. Chocolate begins pouring in, hot, liquid, suffocating. Charlie is encased. The chocolate hardens around him, a shell forming over his skin, his face, sealing him inside. He can't move, can't scream clearly, can't escape, and no one knows where he is. Not the other children, not his grandfather, not even Wonka. Charlie spends the entire night trapped inside that chocolate shell. The mould is taken to Wonka's house, a gift for Wonka's son, who plans to crack it open the next morning like a giant Easter egg. Charlie, still alive inside, waits in the dark. Imagine that. A child alone, encased in sugar, wondering if anyone will find him before he suffocates, or if he'll simply be smashed open and discovered too late. Family entertainment, they called it. Perfectly appropriate for all ages, surely. While imprisoned in the chocolate shell, Charlie witnesses something even stranger. Burglars break into the Wonka house during the night. They steal jewellery, antiques, valuables. Charlie, unable to move or speak clearly, groans loudly, a muffled sound through the hardened chocolate. The noise alerts the Wonka family. The burglars are caught. Charlie is freed. And for his trouble, for nearly dying in a candy prison and accidentally stopping a robbery, Wonka rewards him with a candy shop in the city, not the factory. In this version, Wonka already has a son, an heir. Charlie just gets a storefront and a lifetime supply of chocolate. The end. This wasn't a story about rewarding virtue. It was a story about surviving a madman's negligence. Dahl's wife Felicity later explained the metaphor in a BBC interview. The chocolate mould, she said, represented racial stereotypes. A black child, trapped inside a chocolate shell, invisible, unheard, reduced to an object. The mould fits Charlie perfectly because society expects him to fit a certain shape. But once the chocolate hardens, it's uncomfortable, suffocating. The shell doesn't match who he is inside. It's a cage made of expectations, and Charlie can't be seen or heard through it. He's just another product, another piece of candy, another thing to be consumed. That level of social commentary doesn't usually make it into children's literature, especially not in the 1960s, especially not when the protagonist is black and the factory owner is white, and the entire setup mirrors forced labour dynamics that publishers were desperately trying not to think about. So Dahl rewrote it, removed the racial element, removed the chocolate mould scene, reduced the 7 children to 5, and gave the story a happier ending where Charlie, now racially ambiguous, inherits the factory and gets to be Wonka's successor. Much more palatable, much more marketable, much less likely to draw uncomfortable comparisons to systems of exploitation. But even in the revised version, the Oompa Loompas remained. In the original 1964 publication, Dahl described them explicitly as African pygmies, 2 feet tall, found in the deepest part of the African jungle where no white man had been before. They wore deerskins and leaves. The children ran naked. Charlie mistakes them for being made of chocolate, and Wonka, the benevolent candy genius, smuggled them out of Africa in wooden shipping crates with air holes, packed them up like cargo, brought them to his factory where they work in exchange for cocoa beans. Just cocoa beans. No wages, no freedom to leave, just endless labour in a factory they never chose, for a product they're paid in instead of money. The imagery wasn't subtle. Wooden crates, smuggled from Africa, working for food instead of wages. Dahl even emphasised that the Oompa Loompa chief agreed to these terms, as if that negated the power imbalance, as if consent given under duress in a jungle where your people are starving counts as real consent. By 1971, when the Gene Wilder film went into production, the NAACP and concerned filmmakers raised alarms. The optics were horrifying. You couldn't put that on screen, so Dahl revised again. The Oompa Loompas became fantasy creatures from Loompaland instead of Africa. But here's where it gets interesting. In the revised book text, Dahl described them as having rosy white skin and golden brown hair. He swapped one uncomfortable racial depiction for another, as if the problem was which race they were, not the fact that they were unpaid factory workers smuggled in crates. Then Tim Burton made his 2005 adaptation and somehow managed to circle back to the original imagery. He cast Deep Roy, an actor born in Nairobi, Kenya, to play every single Oompa Loompa, and the flashback scene showing how Wonka found them, deep jungle, exotic threats, Wonka the white saviour bringing civilization and chocolate. Burton claimed he was honouring Dahl's vision. The question is, which vision, the published one or the one Dahl was pressured to change? The other deleted scenes aren't much better. In early drafts, the fizzy lifting drinks weren't just whimsical sodas that made you float. Wonka mentions, almost as a joke, that an Oompa Loompa who was too polite to burp floated away into the sky and was never seen again. A worker died. Wonka's negligence killed him, and it's played for laughs. The 1971 film used this scene to test Charlie's character, but originally it was just evidence that Wonka's factory is a death trap, and he doesn't care. The nut room, where trained squirrels attack Veruca Salt and throw her down a garbage chute, was Dahl's way of showing coordinated animal violence against a child. Burton spent 5 months training 40 real squirrels to sit on stools and crack walnuts, just to film that scene practically. The result? A pack of rodents examining a little girl like she's defective merchandise, deciding she's a bad nut and disposing of her like trash. Her father watches through a gate he could easily climb but doesn't, because Wonka pretends he can't find the key, because the movie wants you to believe this is justice, that Veruca deserves to be assaulted by squirrels and nearly killed because she's spoiled. Mike TV gets shrunk by Wonka vision, then stretched back out using a taffy pulling machine. Wonka jokes that boys are always stretchy and elastic, while literally distorting a child's body through industrial machinery. No apology, no concern, just modification. Physical alteration as punishment, and everyone treats it like a happy ending because at least Mike survived. The 1971 film added its own nightmare fuel with the tunnel scene. That wasn't in the book. Mel Stewart invented it. Gene Wilder's unhinged singing, the flashing images of centipedes and decapitated chickens, the genuine terror on the child actors' faces. That scene works because it accidentally captures the energy of Dahl's original drafts. The sense that Wonka isn't safe, that the factory isn't magical, it's industrial and dangerous, and run by someone who doesn't value human life as much as he values his candy recipes. And that brings us back to the question, who is Willy Wonka, really? Gene Wilder played him as a trickster with a moral code, testing Charlie's honesty, ultimately revealing himself as a mentor, a father figure for a boy who needed one. That's the version the studio wanted, the emotionally satisfying ending where Wonka redeems himself by giving Charlie a future. Johnny Depp played him as a traumatized man-child with unresolved daddy issues, courtesy of Christopher Lee as his dentist father who banned candy. Burton added an entire backstory about Wonka's childhood to explain why he's emotionally stunted and afraid of family connections. By the end, Wonka reconciles with his father, moves the bucket house into the factory, and everyone lives happily ever after in a blended found family situation. Neither version is accurate to the book. In Dahl's text, Wonka is manic, unpredictable, morally ambiguous. He doesn't test Charlie. He doesn't have a tragic backstory. He's just a genius who values his factory more than human safety and happens to need an heir because he's getting old. Charlie wins by default because the other children destroyed themselves. That's it. There's no redemption arc, no emotional growth, just a transfer of power from one generation to the next. The 2023 prequel with Timothée Chalamet seems to be leaning into that more accurate portrayal based on the trailers. A younger Wonka who's ambitious, clever, and possibly ruthless. Whether they'll hint at the darker elements of Dahl's original vision remains to be seen. But the fact that we've had 3 major film adaptations and none of them can agree on who this man is tells you something. They're all trying to make Wonka likeable, sympathetic, redeemable, because the alternative, the version Dahl originally wrote, is a man who traps children in chocolate molds and staffs his factory with people he smuggled from another continent. In 2023, Dahl's UK publisher, Puffin Books, decided the solution was to revise his entire catalogue. They hired sensitivity readers from an organisation called Inclusive Minds and changed hundreds of words across all his books. Augustus Gloop is no longer fat. Mike TV doesn't carry toy pistols. Charlie isn't described as skinny as a skeleton. And the Oompa Loompas, they're now called small people with zero physical description. No height, no hair colour, no skin tone, nothing. Just small people doing factory work. As if removing the descriptions erases the uncomfortable implications. The Oompa Loompas were described as thin and starved in the original. That line was deleted. They had funny long hair and spent every moment climbing through treetops. Deleted. One passage read, "The Oompa Loompa bowed and smiled, showing beautiful white teeth. His skin was rosy white, his hair was golden brown." Entirely removed, replaced with nothing. Now, children reading the book can't visualize these characters at all, can't picture the factory workers who make all the candy. They're just invisible labor, which, ironically, makes the exploitation metaphor even stronger. Dahl himself insisted no changes be made to his work after his death. He told his friend, painter Francis Bacon, "I've warned my publishers that if they later on so much as change a single comma in one of my books, they will never see another word from me." He wanted his work preserved as written. Instead, Puffin and the Roald Dahl Story Company violated that wish, sanitized his texts, then sold the entire catalogue to Netflix for $686 million. They claimed they were protecting children, making the stories more inclusive. But the changes don't address the actual disturbing content. The child endangerment is still there, the factory accidents, the body horror. They just removed the words that made you visualize it clearly, as if the problem with Augustus Gloop isn't that he nearly drowns in a chocolate river and gets sucked up a pipe, but that Dahl called him fat. Meanwhile, the original manuscript, the one with Charlie trapped in a chocolate mould overnight, sits in an archive somewhere. The version where Dahl made explicit what the later drafts only implied. That Wonka's factory isn't a wonderland. It's a place where children get hurt, where workers are exploited, where negligence is rebranded as whimsy, and everyone's supposed to be grateful for the privilege of being there. 3 film adaptations, multiple book revisions, decades of sanitization. And still, the darkness leaks through. Still, you can sense something wrong underneath the candy coating. That's because Dahl built this story on a foundation of horror, and no amount of rewriting can completely hide it. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was never meant to comfort you. It was meant to warn you about unchecked power, about what happens when someone values their creations more than the people who make them, about how easy it is to dress up exploitation in bright colours and call it magic. The story ends with Charlie inheriting a factory built on all of that, and everyone acts like it's a happy ending. Now you know what almost made it to print, and what they've been hiding ever since.